The massive screens in Earth's United Council chamber flickered to life, displaying an image that made everyone gasp. A golden seal of the Galactic Combat Federation spun slowly, its ancient symbols glowing with power. Below it, written in perfect universal standard, was an invitation that hadn't been expected for at least another century. "This is impossible," whispered Council Leader Adams, his weathered face pale under the harsh lights. "We were only discovered 6 months ago." The alien ambassador, a tall being with silvery skin, stood perfectly still as he read the invitation aloud. His voice echoed through the chamber. "The Galactic Combat Federation hereby extends its first invitation to planet Earth, designation Deathworld Class 13, to participate in the Centennial Warrior Trials." The council chamber erupted in murmurs. Earth, being the 13th planet classified as a death world, had barely joined the galactic community. Most worlds waited decades, even centuries, before receiving such an honor. "There must be a mistake," said Defense Chief Wilson. "We haven't even established proper trade routes yet." The alien ambassador's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "There is no mistake. The Federation's selection system is absolute. Your world has been chosen, and according to the ancient laws, you must send one representative." "One representative?" Adams leaned forward. "To compete against the galaxy's elite warriors." "Correct." The ambassador activated the small device, projecting images of the current champions. "You will face the Frost Warriors of Rigel, who can survive in absolute zero temperatures." The image showed crystalline beings wielding weapons made of pure energy. "The Battle Masters of Centauri, who have mastered combat in 11 dimensions." These warriors had multiple arms and armor that seemed to bend reality itself. "And the Void Dancers, beings of pure energy who have never lost a single combat trial." The council members looked at each other with growing concern. Earth's military leaders began shuffling through files, probably searching for their best soldiers. "Oh, and one more thing," the ambassador added, his silver skin gleaming. "The Federation's selection system has already chosen your representative." The room fell silent. A new image appeared above them. A man in his late 40s, wearing dirty work boots and old jeans. He was standing in what appeared to be a farm field, holding a simple tool and smiling at something off-screen. "This is your champion, Tom Richards. Age, 47. Occupation, farmer. Former occupation, Marine, retired 15 years ago." The defense chief jumped to his feet. "This is outrageous. We have active soldiers, special forces operators." The ambassador raised a hand. "The selection is final. The Federation's systems choose based on criteria beyond your current understanding. Mr. Richards will represent Earth." Somewhere in the Midwest region of the North American continent, Tom Richards was having a perfectly normal day. He was checking his cornfields when a government vehicle appeared on his dusty driveway. He watched calmly as men in suits approached, wiping sweat from their brows in the hot sun. Tom hadn't worn a suit in 15 years, not since leaving the Marines, and he didn't miss them one bit. "Mr. Richards," one of the men said, "we need you to come with us. Earth needs you." Tom looked at his fields, then at his old farmhouse. "Will someone feed my dog?" "Sir, you've been chosen to represent Earth in the galaxy's most prestigious combat competition. You'll be facing the most dangerous warriors in known space." Tom nodded slowly, then reached down to pick up his favorite wrench. "Mind if I bring my tools? Never know when you might need to fix something." The men in suits looked confused, but nodded. As they drove away, none of them knew that across the galaxy, the alien champions were already laughing. The news had spread. Earth, the primitive death world, was sending a farmer to the warrior trials. The Frost Warriors sharpened their crystal blades, the Battle Masters practiced their 11-dimensional strikes, and the Void Dancers swirled in anticipation of an easy victory. They had no idea what was coming. The transport ship dropped out of light speed, and Tom Richards looked out the window at the most incredible sight he'd ever seen. The arena station hung in space like a giant silver flower, its petals stretching out for miles. Ships of all sizes buzzed around it like bees around a hive. Tom adjusted his old work boots and checked his tool bag for the 10th time. The government folks had tried to give him fancy combat armor, but he'd turned it down. "Can't fix a tractor in that stuff," he'd said, choosing instead to wear his usual work clothes, sturdy jeans, a thick cotton shirt, and his trusty leatherwork gloves. The landing bay was packed with creatures from across the galaxy. Some floated, some crawled, and some moved in ways that made Tom's eyes hurt. All of them stopped to stare at the human in simple clothes walking down the transport ramp. A group of crystalline beings, the Frost Warriors, stood nearby, their bodies giving off waves of cold that frosted the floor beneath them. Their leader, a towering figure with sharp edges, pointed at Tom's tool bag and laughed, the sound like breaking ice. "The primitive brings primitive weapons," the Frost Warrior said in universal standard. "Perhaps he plans to repair our weapons when we break them." Tom just smiled and patted his wrench. Never know what might need fixing. The battle masters of Centauri were next to arrive, their multiple arms moving in perfect coordination as they adjusted their reality-bending armor. Their commander, a being twice Tom's height, stepped forward to inspect the human. "Your species is young," the battle master said, arms moving in complex patterns. "You have not even mastered dimensional shifting. This will be quick." Tom watched the warrior's movements with interest. "Reminds me of trying to milk 6 cows at once," he said quietly. "All about timing." The void dancers arrived last, their energy forms swirling like northern lights. They didn't speak, but their dismissive gestures needed no translation. A small robot floated up to Tom. "Welcome, Earth representative. Please follow me to the orientation chamber." The chamber was massive, with thousands of seats arranged in a circle. Tom sat in his designated spot, noticing how other warriors kept their distance. The robot projected a huge hologram in the center of the room. "The Centennial Warrior Trials will begin tomorrow," it announced. 3 days of challenges will test your survival skills, combat abilities, and endurance. Day 1. Survival in extreme environments. Day 2. Combat trials against our most advanced battle robots. Day 3. The final challenge, which combines all elements. Tom raised his hand, the simple gesture making several alien warriors snicker. "Yes, Earth representative. Can I bring my tools? Might need to fix something out there." The chamber filled with laughter. The Frost Warriors' crystal bodies clinked together with their amusement. The Battle Master's multiple arms waved in what seemed like mockery. Even the Void Dancers pulsed with entertaining colors. The robot processed the request. Primitive tools are allowed, as they provide no significant advantage. Tom nodded, satisfied. He built his farm from nothing, fixed every piece of equipment himself, and survived 15 years of unpredictable weather and challenging harvests. A few tests wouldn't be much different. As the warriors filed out, Tom overheard the Frost Warrior leader speaking to others. "The human's planet must truly be primitive if this is their best warrior. He doesn't even have a power suit." Tom thought about his farm back home, about the tornadoes he'd weathered, the broken equipment he'd fixed in freezing rain, the 18-hour days during harvest season, about the things Earth had taught him that these beings, with all their advanced technology, had never had to learn. He smiled and checked his tool bag one more time. Tomorrow would be interesting. The morning of the first trial arrived with flashing lights and blaring alarms. Tom was already awake, having risen at his usual farm schedule. He'd spent an hour checking and organizing his tools, just like he did every morning back home. "All warriors to the transport chamber," the station's computer announced. The chamber was massive, with 20 separate pods arranged in a circle. Each contestant would be dropped into a different part of the artificial environment below. Tom watched as the alien warriors made final adjustments to their advanced suits and weapons. "This environment," announced the head judge, "has been designed to test your survival capabilities. Gravity will be 3 times standard. The atmosphere is toxic. Temperature will shift between extreme heat and cold. You have 6 hours to survive and establish a shelter. Begin. The pods dropped. Tom's stomach lurched as he plummeted toward the surface. Through the pod's window, he saw a harsh landscape of sharp rocks and bubbling pools of acid. The sky was green with toxic clouds. The pod door opened, and Tom took his first breath. The air was thick and smelled like his tractor when it needed an oil change. Around him, he could hear the other warriors gasping and struggling. "Just like August in Kansas," Tom muttered, pulling out a rag from his pocket to cover his nose and mouth. The gravity was heavy, but after 15 years of carrying feed bags and fixing farm equipment, it wasn't unbearable. He heard the frost warriors cry out in pain, their crystalline bodies struggling with the heat. The battlemaster's multiple arms trembled under the increased gravity. Even the void dancer's energy forms flickered uncertainly in the hostile atmosphere. Tom got to work. First, he tested the ground with his wrench, finding solid rock under the loose surface, just like checking for good foundation spots in his fields. He gathered some larger rocks, arranging them in a pattern he'd used for emergency storm shelters. A distant explosion made him look up. One of the battle-masters had tried to use their dimensional technology, but the heavy gravity had caused it to backfire. Tom shook his head and returned to his work. Using his pry bar and some smaller tools, he created a small cave in the rock face. He remembered the time his tractor had broken down during a thunderstorm, and he'd had to make similar shelter while fixing it. The acid rain started falling. Tom had already covered his shelter's entrance with angled rocks, letting the dangerous liquid flow away from his cave. He could hear cursing in various alien languages as the other warriors scrambled for cover. Inside his shelter, Tom set up a simple ventilation system using his hollow tools and the natural air currents, a trick he'd learned from clearing out grain silos. The toxic air problem wasn't much different from dealing with dangerous farm gases. Hours passed. Tom kept improving his shelter, adding small channels to direct the acid rain into a collection pool. "Waste not, want not," he mumbled, thinking about his irrigation systems back home. The judges watched in amazement through their monitoring systems. The human wasn't just surviving. He was adapting the environment to his needs, using simple tools and what looked like practice techniques. "Impossible," one judge said. "His species is too young for such advanced survival skills." Another judge zoomed in on Tom, who was calmly eating a sandwich he'd packed. "Look at his movements. Every action has purpose. No wasted energy." In his shelter, Tom checked his watch. Only 2 hours left. He could hear the frost warriors trying to maintain their crystal structure in the heat. The battlemaster's armor was failing under the gravity. The void dancers had condensed into tight balls of energy, barely maintaining their form. Tom took another bite of his sandwich. Just another day of solving problems, as far as he was concerned. Though he had to admit, the green sky was new. "Time for some maintenance," he said to himself, pulling out his tools to reinforce the shelter's walls. After all, a good farmer always kept his structures in good repair, even the temporary ones. The combat arena looked like a giant metal bowl, with smooth walls rising 50 feet high. Tom stood at his entrance gate, watching the other warriors prepare their weapons. After yesterday's survival challenge, they weren't laughing at him anymore, but they still looked confident. "Combat trial rules," announced the judge. "Each warrior will face 3 battle robots. You may use any weapons or tools you brought. Victory is achieved by disabling the robots." The Frost Warriors went first. Their crystal blades flashed as they froze their robots solid. The crowd cheered. The Battlemasters twisted space itself, their multiple arms moving in blinding patterns as they took their robots apart. More cheers. The Void Dancers turned their robots to slog with pure energy. The crowd roared. Then it was Tom's turn. He walked into the arena carrying his tool bag, looking for all the world like a man about to fix a broken fence. His first robot appeared, 8 feet tall, with spinning blades and glowing red eyes. The crowd went silent, expecting a quick end to the humans' fight. Tom looked at the robot the same way he looked at his combine harvester when it made strange noises. He shifted his weight, watching how the robot moved. The machine charged. Tom sidestepped, just like avoiding a spooked bull. As the robot passed, he noticed its leg joints, similar to the hydraulic system on his tractor. "Poor maintenance on those joints," he muttered. The next time the robot charged, Tom threw a handful of dirt from his pocket into its leg mechanisms. The robot stumbled, its movements becoming jerky. Tom waited for his moment, then jammed his largest wrench into the robot's knee joint. The machine toppled forward, its own weight working against it. He quickly moved in with his screwdriver, finding and disconnecting the main power lines, just like when he had to shut down his irrigation system for repairs. The robot went dark. The crowd was completely silent. The second robot was faster, with armor plates covering its joints. Tom smiled. It reminded him of the time he had to break down a rusted-shut grain silo door. He let the robot corner him against the wall. Just as it reached for him, Tom wedged his pry bar into a small gap in its chest plate, using the wall for leverage. The same way he moved heavy equipment in his barn. He popped the plate clean off, exposing the robot's inner workings. A few quick movements with his wire cutters, and the second robot collapsed. The third robot was the largest, armed with energy weapons and force fields. The alien warriors leaned forward, sure that this would finally stop the primitive human. Tom watched the robot's energy field flicker. "Unstable power supply," he said to himself, like that old generator that never worked right. He circled the robot, letting it waste energy firing at him. Each shot made the force field weaken slightly. Tom timed his moves carefully, the same way he timed starting up temperamental farm equipment. When the robot's force field had to recharge, Tom struck. He threw his heaviest wrench straight into the robot's main power conduit, visible as a glowing line on its chest. The robot's systems overloaded, and it shut down with a disappointed whine. Total time: 6 minutes, 12 seconds. Faster than any other warrior. The judges huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. The alien warriors stared at Tom with new respect as he collected his tools, checking each one for damage like he did after every job. "How?" asked one of the battle masters. "Those were advanced combat robots." Tom shrugged. "Machines are machines. They all break down eventually. Trick is knowing where to look and having the right tools to fix, or unfix, them." He headed back to his quarters, making a mental note to oil his wrench later. The worn leather handle had saved his life more times than any fancy energy weapon could. Dawn broke over the arena station, but Tom had already been up for hours. He sat in his quarters, carefully checking each tool and packing his bag just like he did before a long day of harvest work. The station's computer came to life. All warriors report to the final challenge arena. The final arena was enormous, a twisted landscape of obstacles, combat zones, and survival challenges all mixed together. Platforms floated at different heights, some solid, others barely there. Acid pools bubbled below, and combat robots patrolled everywhere. The remaining warriors looked tired. 2 days of constant challenges had taken their toll. The Frost Warriors' crystal bodies showed cracks, the Battle Master's multiple arms moved slower, and the Void Dancer's energy forms flickered weakly. Tom stood ready, his boots planted firmly on the ground. The past 2 days reminded him of harvest season, when you had to keep working no matter how tired you got. "The final challenge begins now," announced the judge. "Cross the arena. Survive the environments. Defeat the Guardians. Reach the endpoint. No rest periods. No breaks." A loud horn sounded. The warriors rushed forward. The Frost Warriors immediately used their remaining energy to create ice bridges across the acid pools. Halfway across, their bridges began to melt in the intense heat. 2 of them fell back, their crystal forms too damaged to continue. The battle masters tried to twist space to their advantage, but their exhaustion made their movements sloppy. Their dimensional portals collapsed, forcing them to take the long way around obstacles. The void dancers, once so bright and powerful, could barely maintain their form. One by one, they condensed into dim spheres and withdrew from the challenge. Tom moved steadily forward, his pace never changing. He treated each obstacle like a job that needed doing, no different from his daily farm work. A narrow beam stretched across an acid pool. The other warriors tried to rush across. Tom lay flat and scooted along it on his stomach, the same way he moved under his tractor to fix oil leaks. Combat robots appeared, while others fought with their remaining strength. Tom waited patiently. He watched their patterns, just like learning the rhythms of his farm equipment. When the robots crossed paths, he used his wrench to tangle their legs together. They fell into the acid pools, destroying each other. A massive climbing wall rose before them, its surface shifting and changing. The remaining warriors tried to scale it quickly, but their tired arms gave out. They fell back, gasping for air. Tom studied the wall, seeing how the sections moved. It reminded him of stacking hay bales. You had to find the right pattern. He climbed slowly but steadily, always keeping 3 points of contact, just like his old farming safety rules taught him. The final stretch was a long run through shifting gravity fields. The other warriors pushed themselves hard, trying to use their last bursts of speed. One by one, they stumbled and fell as exhaustion took over. Tom kept the same steady pace he used when walking his fields. The changing gravity didn't bother him much. It wasn't too different from walking through his fields after heavy rains, when the ground shifted under his feet. He'd reached the finish point alone. The judges stared in disbelief as he calmly sat down and took out his water bottle. His breathing was heavy but controlled. "How?" one judge asked. "The others are all superior warriors with advanced training." Tom took a long drink before answering. "On Earth, we call it farming. You do what needs doing, pace yourself, and keep going until the job's done. Some days that's 16 hours in the hot sun. Some days that's fixing the equipment in the rain. You learn to work with what you've got and keep moving forward." He looked at his worn boots and smiled. "Fancy weapons wear out. Tricks stop working when you're tired. But good old-fashioned work habits, those never let you down." The arena station's main hall was packed with beings from across the galaxy. Floating cameras broadcasted the ceremony to thousands of worlds. On the central platform stood Tom Richards, still in his dirty work clothes, his trusty tool bag at his feet. The head judge, a tall being made of shifting colors, stepped forward with the victory crown, a circle of rare medals that had been worn by the greatest warriors in galactic history. "Never," the judge began, "in 10,000 years of the warrior trials, has anyone completed the final challenge with such simplicity." The judge paused, searching for words. "You used no energy weapons, no dimensional shifts, no advanced technology. Just tools." Tom shrugged. "Good tools are all you need if you know how to use them." The Frost Warriors approached first, their crystal bodies still showing cracks from the trials. Their leader bowed deeply. "We believed our training in the harshest cold made us invincible," the crystal being said. "But you showed us that true strength comes from daily challenges, not special powers." The battle masters came next, their multiple arms moving in a gesture of respect. "Our dimensional combat techniques seemed unstoppable," their commander admitted. "Yet you defeated every obstacle with nothing but physical skill and clever thinking." Even the void dancers, their energy forms still dim from exhaustion, swirled around Tom in a pattern that translated as deep admiration. The head judge held up the victory crown. "Before we crown our champion, the Federation Council has a question." The judge's colors swirled nervously. "You mentioned that your skills came from farming." Tom nodded. "Just regular Earth farming, nothing special." "And how many Earth farmers work in conditions like the trials? The heavy gravity, the toxic air, The constant physical labor. Pretty much all of us, Tom said. Earth's a tough place to grow things. You adapt or you fail. The silence in the hall was absolute. The judge's colors swirled faster. Are you saying that what we consider extreme survival conditions are simply normal working conditions on Earth? Tom thought about his last harvest season, working through a tornado warning, fixing equipment in the freezing rain, moving heavy machinery in the scorching sun. More or less, he said, though the acid rain here was new. Usually it's just regular rain. The alien warriors looked at each other in shock. One of the battle masters spoke up. Then every human farmer is a survival expert. Had to be, Tom replied. Earth doesn't give you much choice. The head judge's colors had become a rapid rainbow of amazement. The Federation may have underestimated Earth's classification as a death world. If these are your normal conditions. That's why I wasn't worried about the trials, Tom explained, checking his wrench for wear. Wasn't much different from a busy week on the farm, except I didn't have to milk any cows here. The victory crown was placed on Tom's head. He adjusted it like he would his old farm cap. Human Tom Richards, the judge announced, you have not only won the warrior trials, you have shown us that Earth's daily life is more demanding than our most extreme challenges. The alien warriors gathered around Tom, all asking questions at once. How do you maintain strength in such conditions? Can you teach us your repair techniques? What is this milking cows training? Tom looked at all the advanced beings, with their special powers and fancy technology, now eager to learn about farming. He couldn't help but smile. Tell you what, he said, pulling out his notebook where he kept his equipment maintenance schedules. Why don't I show you how we start a regular day on Earth? First lesson. Fixing a tractor in the rain. The warriors crowded closer, their weapons forgotten, ready to learn the mysterious Earth art of farming. Nobody laughed at his tools anymore. 6 months after the warrior trials, Tom's farm had changed quite a bit. The old barn now had a landing pad for spacecraft, and the empty field behind his house had become a training ground. Aliens from across the galaxy came to learn what they called the Earth farmer's way of survival. Today, Tom watched as a group of frost warriors struggled to repair a tractor in the summer heat. Their crystal bodies weren't made for this kind of work, but they kept trying. Nearby, several battle masters were learning to stack hay bales without using their dimensional powers. Remember, Tom called out, if you can do it without special powers, you'll be stronger for it. A holographic screen flickered to life near the barn. It showed the Galactic Federation's main chamber, where Earth's representatives were speaking. After careful study, a Federation official announced, we are changing Earth's classification. It is no longer Deathworld Class 13. Earth is now designated as Advanced Training World Number 1. Tom smiled as he watched more ships landing in his field. This group carried warriors from 30 different worlds, all coming to learn Earth farming techniques. They would leave their advanced weapons and armor behind, wearing simple work clothes and using basic tools. The Void Dancers had been the most surprising students. These beings of pure energy discovered that farm work taught them how to maintain their form even when exhausted. They especially liked helping with the night harvests, their glowing bodies providing perfect lighting for the work. Mr. Richards, one of the battle masters, called out, holding up 6 arms tangled in rope. The Earth cattle have escaped again. They are challenging our combat skills. Tom chuckled. That's just old Bessie and her friends. They do that every Tuesday. He walked over to help, remembering how the galaxy's elite warriors had been humbled by his small herd of dairy cows. A small robot floated up to Tom, displaying a message from the Federation Council. Request to establish 1,000 more training farms across Earth. Local farmers to serve as instructors. Compensation in advanced medical technology and agricultural research. Tell them yes, Tom said, but remind them of the rules. No power suits allowed. Everyone starts with basic tools. He patted his trusty wrench, now slightly worn from teaching aliens how to fix everything from tractors to spaceships. In the distance, he could see more Earth farmers welcoming their own groups of alien students. Each farm had become a survival school, teaching the galaxy that true strength comes from dealing with everyday challenges. The Frost Warriors had finished their tractor repair. They stood proudly despite the heat, their crystal forms adapted to work in higher temperatures. "We have learned more about endurance in one Earth week than in a century of combat training," their leader said. Tom nodded and checked his watch. "Good work. Now, who's ready to learn about weather prediction? Storm's coming, and we need to get the hay in before it hits." The aliens rushed to help, excited to face another Earth training exercise that was really just a normal day's work. Even the void dancers dimmed their glow to save energy for the task ahead. As they worked together under the darkening sky, Tom thought about how much had changed. Earth, once seen as a backward world, was now the galaxy's most respected training ground. Its farmers, once dismissed as primitives, were now valued teachers of survival and strength. A distant roll of thunder made the alien warriors look up nervously. Tom grinned and picked up his tool bag. "Welcome to another day on Earth, everyone," he said. Lesson number 1004, fixing a combine harvester in the middle of a thunderstorm. "Trust me, after this, those warrior trials will seem like a vacation." The aliens gathered around him eagerly, ready to learn. Above them, more ships entered Earth's atmosphere, bringing more warriors seeking to learn the most powerful skill in the galaxy: how to be an Earth farmer.